saying congratulations on the film. I've had a chance to sit down and watch it, and I loved it. So congratulations.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
So Blake, tell us a little bit about where the idea for this film came about.
It kind of came from personal experience and watching a lot of different thrillers and horrors, really, but mostly from also society, the way people have their relationships, and I thought it'd be good to put a slight different angle to it, where it's not the typical kind of abusive relationship you would expect, and it's a little bit from, not to the extreme extent, but it is a little bit from what I have experienced in my previous relationships. So it's from that kind of area, yeah.
And you had this idea for the film come about during the pandemic. Did that actually help you be able to sit down and write the screenplay for this film because the world was kind of in lockdown?
Not for this particular film. No, it was just something I wanted to do, but it was kind of a domino effect. Took me to that place because lockdown made me want to make more films, which I did for my channel. I had to force myself to write things that had to be with just myself, and when my films exploded on my channel, and I kept going with different type of short films, and then that led me to the stage of, okay, I think I want to do a feature now. So yeah.
What was the biggest difference you noticed going from short films to feature films? We have a lot of filmmakers that listen to this show, and I know we have a lot of young filmmakers listening who are making short films at the moment. So as a filmmaker, what was the big difference that you noticed going from making a short film to making a feature film?
Originally, I thought it was just going to be like short films with a few extra days. That's what you probably would normally think, but it's completely different. With short films, I tend to not even plan too many shots and not think about the schedule too much, because normally just 1 day and 2 days, sometimes 3 days max. Whereas this, you do really have to plan even on set every night before the next day. Otherwise, you'll be falling behind a lot. So it's a massive difference in terms of scheduling and planning that you really require. That's a big difference, I see.
Yeah. Now, I want to talk about the casting, because the casting here is absolutely brilliant. Tell us a little bit about the cast that you brought together, and were they people that you kind of imagined in those roles when you were actually sitting down to work on the screenplay?
So the character who played by Louis James, he's worked with me for a lot of different short films prior to that, and so it was a kind of automatic decision to cast him, because I know he's in the right place and he's got the right kind of skill and character for that role. So it was easy to cast him. And then the others I've worked with. So Sarah I worked with before, and when I asked her to do an audition with a self-tape, that was a confirmation. Then yes, she was suitable for that character. And then finally, we had to do audition for Emily, who played the protagonist, and she outperformed everyone else. So again, we saw her straight away. She's actually the right to fit in terms of her look as well. So yeah.
Yeah, and you of course played David, who a lot of people I know I've read online think steals the show quite often. Tell us a little bit about David and when you knew that was going to be a role that you were going to play.
Again, I always put myself in films ever since the beginning, and since this is my debut feature, I definitely want to put myself in it, and I get experience from my other films that I've been in, and I've realized my strength is to play a character that's slightly out of the norm.
Yeah.
Somehow, I don't know why, but I play a character not very well when it's just a normal guy, everyday next door neighbor, you know. So I thought, okay, let's just bring this character to life and put that into the screenplay. So yeah, I had that in mind when I was writing it.
One of the other strengths we learn that you have with this film as well is your dialogue. Some of the scenes here with the dialogue are so natural that it feels like it's almost a transcript of a real conversation. For all the writers out there listening, tell us a little bit about how you tackle your dialogue and how you make sure that your dialogue is so natural.
To be honest, I still feel my weakness is in dialogue in terms of screenwriting. Obviously, everyone have their own opinions. There are people who don't find my dialogue very natural, and others do. So it's very subjective, and I'm my own worst critic when it comes to it. So from that sense, I still think I need to improving. But in terms of how I tackle it to make it sound natural, I try to sit and read out what I've written, and once you read out something and you can hear it audibly, you can and see and what works and what doesn't work. That really helps to keep it natural and keep away from the kind of stale words that you use sometimes in dialogues.
Do you also have a lot of rehearsals with your actors and actresses as well to get that flow to work perfectly?
We had a rehearsal mostly on the action scenes because that takes the longest. The other rehearsals we had are very minimal in terms of dialogue scenes. Maybe just a little bit before we roll the camera, and that's it really. But most of the action, we had quite a lot of rehearsals, yeah.
Yeah. And you filmed during the pandemic as well. How did that change things? Because I've heard some horror stories, especially one story from the UK where a director told me that his entire cast and crew had to stay on set the entire time for the shoot, so they ended up all living together for 2 weeks. Well, how did shooting during a pandemic change how you went about things as well?
Yeah, that's exactly what we did. Everyone's living in this house that you see in the film for 2 weeks.
Yeah.
So that's exactly what we did, and because we're in a bubble, so it's easier, and it just makes everything else easier, and it creates a better relationship between cast and crew as well. When you're not shooting, people kind of gather and get to know each other on a different level, and I think that's really good.
Yeah.
Good way of bonding for the crew members.
Does it make it hard though to turn off from your character? Like, I know for a lot of actors, they like to turn off at the end of the day and walk away from the set. Did it kind of make it harder to do that, or did it make it easier because you were able to all relax together?
You mean for me or for all the actors?
For everybody, yeah, yep.
I think everyone's is pretty chilled, and yeah, they were able to just take away from the working time, and then there are evenings where we have a few drinks and we get really kind of let our hair down. So yeah, I think it's pretty flexible to just let go of our characters.
Awesome. Now, because we've got some time left, I wanted to go back to the character of Grace. You mentioned before that when Emily auditioned for that role, she was perfect for the role. What were you looking for when you were looking for an actress to play Grace? Because she is such an amazing character.
Yeah, she really hit the nail, really, because we were looking for someone who's got a good screen appearance, has that facial expression. I was really determined to get someone who can show a lot of expressions through their face rather than dialogue, because as I said before, my dialogue can weaken the film a little bit. So someone with a strong acting face would really save the film, and then she outshined everyone, as you can see the way she acts, and that's the main reason, yeah.
Now, where to now for you as a filmmaker? You've made your first feature now. Where are you hoping that your filmmaking career will go for the rest of this year, but also over the next few years as well?
So over the past 3-4 years, I've built up quite a big fan base on my YouTube and social media channels. People who follow me, they are very keen to watch my short films. I used to make one short film per month last year, and this year I've decided to make 2 short films per month. So that will continue on, and that's happening on YouTube. Everybody can watch on youtube.com/BladeRitter for all those short films free of charge. which is pretty exciting for everyone.
Yeah.
And in terms of feature films, we've just wrapped another feature film called The Manor, which is a horror. That again, is a similar scenario in terms of people who was living on set, but it's much fast-paced, more kind of horrific scenes because it is a horror, and really excited to see how that turns out later this year.
Awesome. I cannot wait to see that. And I guess to finish up, what advice would you like to give to the young filmmakers out there who are listening at the moment? Because, like, you're a very prolific short film filmmaker, and now with feature films as well. So what advice would you give to young filmmakers out there?
I would say just be consistent. That's the key for me. I've met a lot of people through my journey who do things and then eventually they give up, or they say they do something but they don't do it and take a long time. Don't be afraid to don't be afraid to quickly release something to a certain extent that you're happy with, rather than take too long to release something that takes you years and you still end up not happy with. And in that time, you could have learned so much more with other films you make after that. So I also run a podcast giving people advice like this called The Riddle Universe. They can hear a bit more in detail how I face my challenges, how I learn my mistakes, etc.
Awesome. And we'll put up a link there as well so that people can grab a copy of that podcast. Blake, to finish up, what would you like to say to people out there before they sit down and watch Help for the first time?
It is a slow burn, so be prepared for a few slow scenes to begin with, but there are a lot of clues everywhere to entice you what will happen next. But once it gets to the final act, the last 20 to 30 minutes, you'll be pleased that you got there. So yeah.